What if one of the most important shifts in the history of money began not with Nixon, central banks or digital currencies, but in a courtroom in Ireland over 4 centuries ago? In 1604, a little-known legal case asked a question still relevant today: what gives money its value? The case took place in Ireland, not England, showing the Crown's ability to extend its legal authority across its territories. The outcome quietly expanded royal control and changed the structure of monetary power throughout the realm. There were no headlines, no proclamations, only a ruling that still shapes the way money functions today. To understand how, we do not begin in 1971, we focus in on 1604. This case followed a brutal conquest in Ireland by the English. To finance its campaign, the English crown issued base metal coins called mixed monies. These coins had little silver content, but were given the same value as full silver coins. They were made legal tender during the war and accepted out of necessity. This, of course, triggered Gresham's Law, where bad money was driving out the good money. Merchants and creditors hoarded silver coins and circulated the debased mixed monies, disrupting trade and debt repayment. It's also worth noting that this was also likely to be an act of economic warfare conducted by the English monarch in the belief that supplying Ireland with debased coins would deprive the Irish of the ability to buy foreign weaponry. Once peace had returned, creditors and merchants challenged them and refused to accept them at full value. Lawsuits later followed. The dispute focused on whether the Crown could force subjects to accept debased coins in payment of debts. The case of the mixed monies, Gilbert versus Brett 1604, was a pivotal ruling, heard by the English Privy Council in Ireland, establishing the sovereign's authority define legal tender, arising from a dispute where Elizabeth Brett paid a debt in debased mixed monies, base metal coins declared equal to sterling by Queen Elizabeth I's 1601 proclamation, instead of the silver sterling demanded by the merchant Gilbert. The case was heard by the Privy Council. Chief Justice Popham ruled in favour of the Crown, and the court declared that the value of money came from sovereign authority. This was a turning point. Money was no longer based on metal content, but on legal declaration. By addressing the disruption caused by Gresham's Law, the ruling stabilised the Crown's monetary control and paved the way for later developments in central banking, fiat systems and modern monetary policy, of course. The ruling gave new strength to the royal prerogative, that is, the Crown's inherited power to command without parliamentary approval. It allowed monarchs to act as de facto central banks, issuing and declaring the value of money without consent from subjects or markets. In effect, there was no structural need for central banks. The sovereign already had full authority over monetary creation, backed by the courts. What followed, however, was not the end of monetary manipulation, but a shift in who controlled it. Over time, this absolute authority was gradually transferred from monarchs to creditors, financial elites, and institutional central banks. Watching this transition unfold across centuries, from royal decree to technocratic policy, reveals one of the most consequential evolutions in financial history. Now, it's worth noting the ruling was a political move, not a detached theory of money. The Crown wanted to fund its conquest and faced resistance to its coinage. The court's decision gave the Crown the legal power to impose money on its subjects. This allowed the state to manage war finance and control economic behaviour through declared value. The judges were not independent. Chief Justice Popham and others were Crown loyalists. Their ruling was designed to support the monarchy's fiscal needs. The court helped turn monetary enforcement into a legal tool of power and later perpetual war. The decision created a precedent for compelling the use of state-issued currency. It confirmed that subjects had to accept whatever money the government declared valid, even if it had no intrinsic worth. Ordinary people, whether peasants in 1604 or workers in 1800, had no voice in these transitions and were forced to accept debased coins, then later forced to pay taxes in central banknotes, and then again forced to save in currencies that lose value via inflation. This was not about resolving a coin dispute, it was about the power to enforce economic behaviour through law. The creditors were forced to accept debased coinage and initially suffered losses, but over time the ruling worked in their favour. By tying value to law, it created clarity in contracts. Courts could enforce repayment using whatever the state defined as money. This gave creditors more reliable ways to collect debts, even as the state manipulated the currency. The case also marked a transfer of monetary power. Money moved away from being a product of metal or market trust. Money had become a legal construct controlled by state institutions and later by banks, financial elites and bureaucracies. Central banks and legal tender laws developed within this framework. The mixed monies case was an early example of monetary legalism. It introduced the concept that money exists by law, not by nature. This became a key idea in state-centered theories of money, including modern monetary theory. The case shifted the focus from intrinsic value to legal authority and control. Though England did not pass a formal legal tender law until 1833 and the United States followed later in the 19th century, the 1604 ruling laid the foundation. The logic remains active in today's financial systems. It also created moral tension. Religious thinkers believed that money should reflect natural or divine order. The ruling rejected that view. It replaced traditional ethics of value with state power, causing lasting friction between law and morality. In summary, the mixed monies ruling redefined money. It removed value from substance and placed it in sovereign authority. Every note, coin, or digital token today relies on this legal foundation. The story of fiat currency did not begin in the 20th century. It began in 1604 when a court declared that money is whatever the law says it is. The mixed monies case reminds us that money is not just coins or notes. It's a system of power, control, law, and, unfortunately, often mistrust. What also makes for fascinating reading is understanding how the royal prerogative was then given away to central banks within that century. That's something we'll look at in future episodes. So I do hope you'll join me there. Do check out the other videos in this playlist, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye bye.